The Tier 14 Garrison Hull is out, and would usually start the Garrison videos by saying this is the most important ship of the year and you need to build this over everything else, and while you should still build it, this is actually going to be a regular raid ship, and I want to talk about the build for this one as we get into the first raid in a few weeks. Hey everyone, Derpy here, and welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. So if you didn't notice, I have not made any videos much recently, and that's because, well, I was on vacation, and I have been finding it a little bit harder to get back into the swing of things with the new PvP system and all that other jazz. But I do want to make sure I get a video out for you on the Snapjaw, because this has a few quirks which we don't actually know about completely yet. Starting out with the blank hull and the interesting stats about this one, it is obviously Garrison ship, 54 million armor points, which is nothing too crazy. It has some base stats in terms of mortar reload, explosive damage, building damage, so it's going to be the standard Garrison ship of mostly attacking buildings with a little bit of damage towards ships, and we'll get to that when we get down to the heavy weapon. There are various different upgrades. U1 has a CIC, which we assume will be in Forsaken Mission or Pillage, Strike, etc. And the other upgrades to this have Survival, Damage, Evade. Evade is likely not going to be too relevant, except on the flagship, and we'll get to that one. Then there's also going to be Heavy Armor unlocked at U3 as well as X1, with Cap coming out a ways after I make this video. In terms of the special abilities, note that there is a Tide Binder Mortar, as well as the standard aura. And what this does is you'll be able to play around with this in the raid, but this will slow down enemy ships dramatically, so you're going to have to use these against a few ships in the target and stop them from helping to basically unlock enemy turrets and have them start shooting at you. The Kixeye strategy guide does include a few more details, but I don't always necessarily trust everything that ends up in those ones. So you'll have to play around with this one in the raid, and if you want to see videos coming out the first day of the raid, subscribe on YouTube, and if I'm not on vacation, you'll see those there first. Now in terms of the actual build, let's start with the weapons because that's the easiest. Every single slot can only be standard weapons, no countermeasures are allowed. So go ahead and build up 3 or 4 of your ships with as many weapons as you can. Obviously the ranked ones, epic, legendary, etc. are better than the standard ones. I'm just showing standard for simplicity. And again, I think I only participated in 1 day out of the last raid, so I am short a few 100 million points from what I like to get. Now anyway, you can change these mortars to the other versions of that totally for free as you start to unlock them, so don't worry about that one. Just make sure if you're refitting or copying over build codes, you change to the best versions of mortars that you have. Number 2 is armor, and I don't really play around with armor too much anymore these days. With the standard regular hulls, I like to go for the just 3 missile and 3 explosive in this case. I don't want to play around with D5 EV on this one yet, although we might need to based on the flagship and what comes out with that one. So if you want to, you could leave these blank for now. I may do that one, but if we don't hear anything else too crazy about the flagship, I'm going to put on, 3 missile and 3 explosive on this one. Again, use the better armors if you have that, and maybe hold off till we get the flagship and raid 1 starts. I find it quite frustrating that the flagship comes out in raid 1, the first raid we need to use it in, but that's how it is, and Kixeye doesn't seem too interested in getting feedback on this particular issue. Moving on to the specials, there are 5 relatively straightforward ones and 1 pretty tricky one. I'm curious if you can come up with it before I do here. In terms of the limited items, you're going to want to go for the engine that came out with the ship, which is the Shell Surf engine. If you don't have this one, you can hope it comes out in the TLC in a few weeks at the same time as the replacement for Bounty, which is Conquest. Otherwise, use one that's a tier 13.5 engine, and as long as you match combat speed across the fleet, you will be perfectly fine. Special slot number 2 is going to be a limited item that came out with the hull, and this is going to be the Flashbite module, which gives you 100% mortar reload, which is just cutting the time in half, as well as explosive damage, a very small amount of 35%. This is very similar, and by the way, Kixeye, you have a little bit of a bug going on here. If I type in Mortar Reload, the new special that has Mortar Reload does not show up, but the old ones do. Now, the old ones have splash and spread modifiers. The reason why the new one does not is not because it's worse or Kixeye's overlooked it. It's because the one of these next specials we'll put on has splash and spread and does not stack with the Ascension Mortar system. Although the Ascension Mortar system from the Everest is still a very good special and would kind of be my second choice if it didn't have these stacking issues. Now, taking a look at this one, go ahead and just put on Flashbite module. If you don't have that one, we'll play around with something else to put on instead. This should not be an issue. It should be available in the TLC for the Snapjaw. So again, just stay waiting for that one. The last limited one I'm going to put on for right now is going to be the Liquid Fire Warheads. This has a slight splash bonus, and then the big one is over 3 times building damage. If you don't have this one, K2, with a dash between those, K2 Bombardment System is your next best bet. These are consistently available in Strike for relatively cheap. I believe it's 1,000 points per. It could be more expensive. It's sometimes in there twice at 2 different prices, which is again a great thing by Kixeye to do, to offer us 2 things, the same thing twice for different prices in the same event. But I digress. Jumping over to the blueprint specials now. Actually, I lied. We have one more limited one. This is going to be the Explosive Battery 2. If you don't have this, the Garrison Battery 2 is actually the second best option rather than Explosive Battery 1, and Garrison Battery 2 is unlimited in the blueprint tab, so that's the second best option if you don't have Explosive Battery 2. Now jumping over to the blueprint special, so we're going to put on that splash boosting special I talked about earlier, which is the Barnacode Processor. What this has to do with Barnacode and barnacles and what a Barnacode is, I could not tell you. This is on here for the projectile speed, explosive reload, splash, and spread. The other stats actually don't really do too much here, so I would look for a projectile boosting special as your alternate if you don't have this one. Although again, it's unlimited, you probably have a pretty easy way to get this one. If not in the past raid, you can get it in Strike or even Raid 1 if you really need to. Now the last special is going to be a really interesting one, and I'm curious if any of you can think of things that would go well in this last slot. It's not going to be evade, because we'll talk about that later. It's not going to be combat speed, because I don't really think there's anything too crazy or helpful directly with that. Now this special does have combat speed, but the other reason it's on there, and I guess combat speed is relatively helpful, the other reason, and usually we'd have like a countermeasure special, there's no countermeasures on this ship, and combat speed again is not enough by itself, but we're actually going to use a special that boosts splash as well as combat speed. You could put on something like Viscosity Regulator to get a 50% splash increase, but why do that when you could put on something like Nuclear Accelerators 2, which has a 40% splash increase, so slightly lower, but a 25% bonus combat speed, which means it's more fun to drive, you'll get through the targets more quickly, you can outrun some area of effect damage from some of the mortars, etc. So this is a pretty great special. It is very heavy in terms of weapon weight, so just watch out for this max here. I'm going to be very annoyed at Kixeye again if, say, the CIC has a very large weight item and the heavy armors are very large on weight. I'm going to be quite annoyed if this breaks builds, because we don't yet have the heavy armors and don't yet know how much it weighs, and if the CIC is in game at this point, I'm not checking, to be honest with you, because I don't want to try and figure out how many tons each of these things are. So if this is overweight, I'm going to kind of, I guess, complain about it until it gets fixed. This has happened for a few other holes previously. Weight is not designed to be a limiter on our builds. If it was, I would only be okay with that, which actually would be great if it was an informed tactical decision. But because we don't have the heavy armor weights yet, and when the ship came out, the CIC weights didn't exist, it's not an informed tactical decision. It's a WAG or wild A guess. So this is the build for the standard Snapjaw, and I'm going to build this one by leaving the armors blank to begin with, because there's a possibility of D5 EV or something like that on the flagship, which means that these would also need to be D5 EV. Now the flagship build is a little bit too early to discuss, because again, we haven't seen the stats, but based on the Kixeye strategy guide, there are 3 different missile turrets, which the key says should outrange us, and each of them has King Killer. Because of this, I am expecting the flag to come out with a higher than 57 million armor points, say 60 million armor points, which means that every single missile will target the flagship until it gets damaged below the rest of the fleet. Again, that's only true if the flag has more than 50 million armor points. 57, I should say. If it ends up having the same, then we will for sure need evade on all our ships or some other weird driving technique or armor modifications. Now, because every single missile will shoot at the flagship, you can give that one an extremely high evade, which means that if it has 99% evade, all the missiles shoot at that one, they're all going to miss, and you basically remove missiles as being a worrisome thing from the target. But again, that's only true if the flagship has higher armor points, which we don't yet know, and we won't know until Raid 1. If Raid 1 hits and it doesn't, then we're going to need to change the build I'm showing you slightly, which would be a little bit disappointing, but again, not the end of the world, especially if you can leave the armors blank and save some generic Snapjaw build tokens until we actually get to the flag into Raid 1. If you do have any questions, go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. I'm curious what you came up with on the Snapjaw build. Are you doing anything differently, considering something like Hyper 30 over nuclear accelerators? Are you going with crazy armor builds? Do you have any other information about the flag? Go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below. And again, I'll make sure to get back to you. With that said, I want to give a huge thank you to all the channel members who are supporting and have their names on the end screen. They're helping make videos like this one possible. With that said, and until next time, this is going to be Derpy signing out, helping you be a better pirate.